Hello, it's Shari here today, and I'm going to be showing you how I made this simple Christmas card using some die cuts. So first I have a piece of the white wood grain cardstock here that I'm just going to make a card base out of. You could also make a card base out of just regular cardstock and cover it with a panel if you're trying to conserve this lovely wood grain cardstock, or you could also cut a panel with the stitch wood grain backdrop and get a similar effect as well, just cutting it out of white cardstock and putting it on a card base. So I'm going to be using this small wreath die as well as the J and the Y from Louie's ABC's die set to spell out the word joy. And I'm going to be cutting my pieces out of some sparkle cardstock. So I have some red cardstock from the holiday sparkle set as well as a green. And in this collection there are two greens. I'm using the one that's more of a limey green, I guess, more on the yellow side, because that just had the look that I wanted with the green and the red and some traditional colors. I also think this card would look great cut out of some non-traditional colors too, like silvers and golds and coppers. So I've cut a little piece of the green cardstock here that I'm going to cut my wreath out of, and then I just did the same with that red strip of cardstock that was left over. I just used a scrap, so this is a great way to use up some scraps. And I cut out the Y and the J. So you can see we're going to spell the word joy here. I've also got the die that cuts the little string with the bow. This is very thin, delicate die cut, and I've cut that out of some black licorice cardstock. So that's going to hang our wreath from the top of the card. So to finish it, I want to say joy to the world. So I'm going to cut a curved folded banner here, and I'm going to cut it out of some narwhal cardstock. I thought that this lighter gray would look good on that white and not overpower the bright, colorful part of the joy part of our card. And then I'm going to use Harold's ABCs to spell out to the world. Now my Heralds are very old. This is the first stamp set I actually ever got from Lawn Fawn, so they've seen a lot of love and they don't stick to their acetate very well. But I'm just going to spell out to the world, and I'm laying these on the curved banner because I think it's easier. Now these are easy to line up in a straight line, but since I'm doing a curve, I'm laying it on the banner first. Otherwise, I would line these up on the block just right beside each other. The L is really hard to get to stand up, so I'm going to put that one aside, and I'll just fill that one in once I pick these up with the block. You can see mine need like a bath or something. They don't want to stick very well. But once I've got them on the block, then I can kind of move them around. And I'm going to stamp them out just on a test piece of paper to make sure I've got the curve and the spacing right. And one way to do that without cutting another banner on this scrap piece of paper, I'm just tracing it with a pencil to what the shape of that banner is, where that sentiment's going to go, and I'm just stamping it in there to make sure I've got it spaced the way I want it. So once I've got them on the block the way I want them and they're good to go, I can stamp it on my banner, and I am going to white emboss this on the banner so it really pops off the banner and matches that nice bright white wood grain background that we've got going on. So I'm just going to dust my banner with the anti-static powder tool and use some Lawn Fawn white embossing powder to emboss my sentiment. So I'm using that static tool, anti-static tool I should say, so that the embossing powder only sticks to where my sentiment is. I decided to go ahead and fold the banner just so I could easily see where the extents of that flat part are, where my sentiment needs to go. But when it comes to stamping it, I'm just going to flatten it back out. And since I touched it with my fingers and there might be oil on my hands, I just use that powder tool one more time. So I'm just going to sort of line it up straight, and I'm going to use my clear embossing ink. I'm just going to ink up that sentiment very well, which is hard to see, especially when you have some stained stamps like I have here. So I was just looking at it in the light to make sure that it was inked evenly, and then I'm going to stamp that down and just add that white embossing powder to that. Then I can take my heat tool and melt that embossing powder to make my nice bright white sentiment. So once that's all nice and melted and embossed, I can start to assemble my card. So I'm just going to line it up and find the center, and then I'm going to open it up so it'll lay flat. Because of the embossing on this cardstock, it doesn't want to lay flat when it's folded all the time. So I've just done this so I can sort of see the center and it not be way up on the top of my cardstock. I'm going to start with the wreath because that's what I want everything centered around. And then I can add in that little thin black string and bow, and I can line it up with my little pencil mark that I made at the top. Now I know it's in the center, and I'll just trim off the extra here when I'm done. I'm going to add the Y and the J, and you can see why it's kind of important to start in the center. This way everything gets centered nicely. And then for my sentiment banner, I've just put some thin foam adhesives on the middle part, and then I'm going to use glue dots for the part that folds under. This will help it lay flatter with the dimension that you get when you folded this thick cardstock. So the center will be slightly popped up, just enough to where those pieces that fold up and underneath can kind of tuck in there nicely, and you don't have the ends of the sentiment sort of bowing up on you. So what I like to do is sort of stick the center down first where those foam adhesives are, and then I can just push the ends in and push down that glue dot that I've put on the back side of those end pieces of the banner. Now it does still pop up a little bit just because this is thick cardstock that's folded. So the little trick I like to do is I like to use a glue dot, and I'm going to take my craft knife here. I'm just going to pick up the glue dot with my craft knife. I'm just going to tuck it in underneath, and that'll hold that down nicely and keep it from trying to bow up on the ends. Now that I have all these pieces, I'm going to fold it closed, and I can trim off the extra of this little hanger here. So now it looks like my wreath is hanging from the top. And then to finish it off, you can use the little die that cuts out the berries, but I thought since I had a lot of sparkle going on, it would be kind of nice to add these little gems. So I've got some red gems here from Little Things by Lucy's cards, and I believe these are the cherry color, and I'm just kind of trying to scatter them about and space them evenly. They come in different sizes. You could also use sequins or enamel dots too. I think anything would work just to add that little touch of the berries on the wreath, just for something a little extra. And I'm using my jewel picker to put these down. My glue isn't quite sticky enough, so you can see I'm having to use my other hand to kind of get them off because my jewel picker is very sticky. But there is the finished card, and I just love the simplicity of it, but it still really catches your eye. So here's a look at that finished card. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.